Iraq's Prime Minister-designate has withdrawn his candidacy a month after his appointment. Mohammed Allawi says politicians were obstructing his efforts to form a government. Earlier, Parliament failed to approve his cabinet for the second time in a week.
حاولت بكل الطرق الممكنة.
I tried by all possible means to save Iraq from drifting to the unknown and to solve the current crisis. But during negotiations, I faced many obstacles that are irrelevant to the issue of the homeland and its interests. I swear to God, I didn't surrender and I didn't put my own interests above the country's. Regrettably, some parties were negotiating for their interests without paying heed to national issues.
While Iraq's president now has 15 days to propose a new candidate, Allawi was picked to replace Adel Abdul Mahdi. He was forced to resign 2 months ago following weeks of anti-government demonstrations. Thousands of Iraqis have been protesting since October. They're angry about corruption, which they say is rampant in the government, and they're also frustrated about the lack of jobs and poor public services. Rights groups accuse security forces of carrying out a brutal repression against mostly peaceful demonstrators. More than 500 people have been killed since the protests began in October. Well, let's speak to Mahdi Al-Shamari about this. She's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She's a research fellow in the Middle East Initiative at the Harvard Kennedy School. Thank you so much for being with us. So why was Mohammed Allawi not able to get his cabinet approved, do you think? What was the main sticking point?
Mohammed Allawi, the main problem he faced was that he was up against a system that has been entrenched for years and a system that favored an ethno-sectarian quota. So the cabinet he proposed and the government that he wanted to push through was one that consisted of independent members for the most part, and the political elite in Iraq has no interest in having an independent cabinet. They've grown accustomed to splitting the pie that is Iraq, which funnels into their corruption and fuels the kind of government that they've been leading for the past few years. And so they had no interest in a candidate who would be opposed to the system, and they had the power and the authority to push against it.
But it's a non-sectarian-based political class, a new system, what protesters have been demanding, isn't it? I mean, why didn't he also not have the public support then?
So that's exactly what the protesters are demanding. The protesters are completely against the ethno-sectarian system. They just want a system of qualified candidates who are put in positions and act professionally. But of course, what the protesters want, they're not getting because of the current political elite. And the political elite thought that endorsing Mohammed Allawi would be a way to appease the protesters and still get what they want. And so they were hoping for that to happen. But of course, when Allawi was nominated by the same system that protesters find to be problematic, what ended up happening was that the protesters immediately turned against Allawi because he was nominated by a system that they did not approve of. So from their point of view, anyone who rises from this system is going to be someone who is questionable.
Interesting. So where does this then leave Iraq now politically? And what happens, you know, if there's still not a prime minister in the coming weeks or coming months?
So there's two things that are going on at the same time. Politically, we're at a point where the president, Barham Saleh, has to decide on a new prime minister designate. And he announced that he's going to be talking to the parties again and announcing within 15 days. And the same process happening again, the can being continuously kicked down the road perpetually. And that's one of the things that's going to be happening politically. And of course, they're not going to find a candidate who's going to be someone who's highly supported by the protesters and someone that the political cartels actually want. So this will be a problem we'll continuously have. At the same time, what has been happening with the protests is that what the protesters have rightfully recognized happening in Iraq for the past few years is that internal reform is very hard to push through. And from the protesters' point of view, anything short of revolution will not do at this point. So they've been continuously shouting recently against the entire system and wanting an entirely new political system with a new electoral law.
Thank you so much for your insight, Mahdi Al-Shamari from the Harvard Kennedy School, joining us there via Skype. Thank you for your time.